In this video, I'll be sharing information about the appraisal process here in the state of California and what your 5 options are as a buyer if your home doesn't appraise for your contracted purchase price. What's up everyone, Toby Fernie, local realtor here in the Monterey area. If you're new to the channel, it is all things real estate and living here in Monterey. Likes and subscriptions to the channel are always greatly appreciated. If you're a buyer looking for your dream home in the area or a seller wondering the value of your home in today's market, be sure to give me a call, send me a text or an email, and let me know how I can help you reach your goals. Alright, so let's first get into talking about what the appraisal process is. This is going to be part of the contract and part of the purchasing process if you're buying a home with a loan. Whatever lending institution is offering you this money is going to want to make sure that your home is worth the value and the amount of money that they're offering to give you with this loan. In order to verify and make sure that this home is worth the amount that you're purchasing the property for, they're going to have someone who is called an appraiser. This is a third-party individual who will come out and they're going to do an appraisal to check the value of the property based on recent comparable sales. There's a pretty strict set of criteria in terms of the home being the same amount of bedrooms, bathrooms, similar square footage for the house and lot, upgrades to the property within a certain distance to the property that you're purchasing, and to be sold within a recent time period. I have many clients who said that they hate the appraisal process and they don't fully understand it because the value of any commodity is what someone is willing to sell that commodity for in comparison to what someone is willing to buy that commodity for. When you think about the fact that the lending institution, depending on the purchase price of your home and the value of your loan, could be offering to give you $500,000, $1 million, or even more if you end up getting a jumbo loan. So in many ways it does make sense that there's checks and balances in order to make sure that these properties are going to be worth the amount of money that you're buying them for. In the event that you default on the property and you're not able to make those payments, the bank is going to want to make sure that they can then go and turn around and sell that property and get their investment back. The ideal scenario for you as a buyer is if your home appraises at the contracted purchase price or above the contracted purchase price. In my experience, around 90% of the time, the appraised value will come back at the exact same dollar amount as the purchase price, whatever you're buying the house for. The remaining times, the appraised value will come back either above the purchase price or below the purchase price. But what are your options and what happens in the event that the home appraises for a lower value than what you're purchasing the home for? If the appraiser comes back and says in their professional opinion the home is worth less than what you're purchasing the home for, this creates a bit of a situation. With a real estate market that is fluctuating and prices that are going up and down, this can sometimes become a more common scenario in which homes are appraising above or below your contract price. Let's say you're in contract and you're purchasing a home for $900,000. If that home appraises for $900,000 or more, you're all set. If the home appraises for less, let's say $880,000, this is a $20,000 gap between your purchase price and the appraised value. Option 1 would be to ask for a second appraisal. This is kind of like getting a second opinion from a doctor. The downside on this is that it's going to take time. In the state of California, the standard dates on the contract for the residential purchase agreement says that you have 17 days to complete the appraisal process. From my experience, it can typically take 1 to 2 weeks for the appraiser to come out to the house, depending on how busy they are, check out the property, and put together their report based on other comparables. If you have to schedule a second appraisal after the first one, then this process could take well over 17 days. You're going to need to ask the sellers for an extension. A seller who needs to sell their property, let's say they're in contract to purchase another home, or if they're impatient or wanting to sell their property as soon as possible, that seller may not be willing to give you that extension, and they're within their rights to cancel the contract if you don't release your appraisal contingency within that 17-day time period. And there's nothing to say that that second appraisal will come in at a different value than the first one. There's a possibility that the value will come back higher, but also it could come back the same or even lower. Option 2, in the ideal scenario for you as a buyer, is for you to ask the sellers to drop the contract purchase price down to the appraised value. So in that example that we had, you were in contract for $900,000, the home appraised for $880,000. You're going to then ask the sellers for a reduction in price and move your contract price to $880,000. This is obviously going to be the ideal scenario for a buyer, but not the ideal scenario for a seller. Option number 3 would be kind of the reverse of scenario number 2, in which the buyer is going to make up the difference and pay an extra $20,000 in our example at the closing table to make up the difference between your contracted purchase price and that appraisal gap. So in this option as the buyer, you're going to need to bring an additional $20,000 to the closing table, which isn't always an option for buyers, especially when you're purchasing expensive properties like here in the state of California. The fourth option, and what often happens if you have reasonable parties on both sides and it's financially feasible for both sides, is for you to meet somewhere in the middle as the buyers and the sellers. So in that example with the $20,000 appraisal gap, the sellers would reduce the purchase price $10,000 and the buyers would bring an additional $10,000 to the closing table to meet right in the middle. If none of these 4 options work for the buyers and the sellers, then as the buyer, you may be unable to finalize your loan and purchase the home. So then at that point, as long as you kept your appraisal contingency in with your offer, you have the ability to cancel the contract at that time. Obviously, this is not the ideal scenario for the buyers or the sellers, but that's why there are safeguards in place with those contingencies on the residential purchase agreement and the contract here in California. Now, the purpose of this video was to go over what appraisals are and what the 5 options are in the event that your home doesn't appraise for your contracted price. It's something to keep in mind when you're writing offers, and you want to make sure, probably anyways as a buyer, that the contract price that you're offering is close to what other homes have sold for recently. But if I were you as a buyer, I wouldn't stress about this up front when you're putting in offers. This is one of those scenarios that you can cross that bridge in the event that the home doesn't appraise for your contracted purchase price. If you have any questions about appraisals, put them in the comments section below. If you're a buyer looking for your dream home in the area or a seller wondering the value of your home in today's market, be sure to give me a call, send me a text, or an email at toby.fernie@gmail.com. Like and subscribe. Stay tuned for future content all about real estate and living here in Monterey, California.
Click the icon to subscribe to more content from living in Monterey, California.